Tonight, an update on a young swimmer who went missing in Port Aransas earlier this week. It is where we begin on this Friday.
The body of the swimmer was found at 2:30 this morning between beach marker 9 and 10. The swimmer was identified as 19-year-old San Antonio native Nicholas Austin Mireles.
Now, just before noon Wednesday, crews were called out in regard to two swimmers in distress in that area. Mireles was swimming with his father, 47-year-old Richard Mireles, when both began to struggle. The father was pulled from the water and taken to a hospital where he later died. Our thoughts are with the Mireles family tonight.
Absolutely. Now, we know this is a time of year where a lot of families want to be in and around the water to stay cool, but some grim stats coming down from the State Department of Family Protective Services, specifically pertaining to child deaths. This week in Texas, 6 children drowned at places like swimming pools and bathtubs. There was one reported beach death in a child.